Well, hey everyone, and welcome to our replay of our hot seat coaching call. This was originally recorded on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. And up next, another learning session. This time we're going to be surveying you to see what you want to learn about. So watch your email, watch social media for a survey coming soon. And now, our hot seat coaching call. So why don't we go ahead and do some introductions. So Jessica, you are in my upper left-hand corner. So I'd love it if you could just share your name, where you work, and why you wanted to sign up for this particular session.
So I am Jessica. I work for Moat Marine Laboratory and Aquarium. I am their guest services manager. So I signed up for this just to kind of basically develop myself as a leader. Like I said, it's kind of nice when you can bounce ideas off of all different avenues, all different aspects. It's good to get fresh perspective on things because at the end of the day, it is people purchasing products that makes the world go round. So that's my interest.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, you are next. Take it away.
I'm Ryan. I work at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. I'm an assistant supervisor in ride operations. I'm also a student at Virginia Tech. The main reason why I wanted to join today was just to ask some general questions about leadership and trying to improve where I can and take in positive feedback because I've got like specific situations like, hey, how could I have done X, Y, or Z better? So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. All right, Andrew, you're up.
So yeah, my name is Andrew Felice. Work at Waldemere and Waterworld in Erie, Pennsylvania. My role is operations manager. I heard about this through my boss Brian, and I thought it'd be interesting because it's you can never stop learning about how to be better at leadership.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. All right, Megan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Gannon. I work for Image Engineering. We're a practical special effects company, so lasers, fire, fog, drones, all that kind of fun stuff. And I'm their business development manager, specifically for themed entertainment. So theme parks is what I love. It's what I've always wanted to do. So I love being able to connect with people. And that's one of the reasons why I joined this webinar. It's always great to meet new people in the industry. And I'm now a year in with Image this month. And it's kind of my first real leadership role in my career. So I really believe in lifelong learning and just, whatever tips I can get from other people, I'm happy to be a sponge and just learn what I can to be better.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. All right, Dan.
Hello, I'm Dan Hudick, also with Waldemere Park in Erie, PA. I've been here for about 20 years in management in the water park, and I'm here to learn, share, and grow.
I love it. I love it. You're taking my tagline.
Hey, if it's good, gotta take it, right?
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All right, Carissa, please say hello.
Yeah, I'm another one from Waldemere Park in Erie. There's quite a few of us today at this meeting. Just our organization in general is trying to be better at leading all the young people that we have that work for us. And we're just trying to grow as a better community altogether. So that's why there's so many of us today.
I love it. I love it. It's great to see you all here on the call. So thank you, Carissa. I really appreciate it. All right, and Patrick, are you able to share? I didn't know if you said you were driving or you were doing something else today.
Doing both, so that's why I'm kind of in and out. I'm the director of maintenance at Waldemere, another one of us on this call. With our new structure being developed here, it's good to attend these to learn how to grow and keep everything moving forward.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that. We are Waldemere proud and heavy today, which is awesome. I love to see so many people from the same organization all invested in their learning. So let's go a little deeper into kind of what we're going to be doing today. Again, we're going to be engaging in something that I like to call a hot seat coaching call. And this is something that I use a lot in my mastermind programs and my group coaching programs. And it's a really great way for people to get different perspectives and learn new ways maybe of doing something that they haven't thought of. And again, this is where we kind of tap into the hive mind of the people around us. And you've already heard, that we have a lot of different experience. Even though we have 4 people from Waldemere, they all bring different experiences with them and different knowledge that we can tap into. So that's going to be a big part of what we do on the call today. And really, this is about turning it over to you. So let me kind of share a little bit about how the hot seat coaching call works. So during the hot seat coaching call, one person will volunteer to be in the hot seat. So I'm just going to pick on Ryan. Ryan, I'm going to pick you just for a second, right? Now, Ryan might say, hey, I'm having trouble with this, or this is a particular challenge that I'm having. And then we get everybody on the call to share at least one thing, right? So you might ask a question. You might say, give me a little bit more information on that. Or you might say, well, I've had a similar situation. This is how I would, or I've handled this in the past. And it's a really great way, again, for Ryan to get some more input. So Ryan gets help in that situation. But what I've also found is that in being engaged in the coaching side of it, or in the kind of advice giving or guidance side of it, that it also helps to build other people's confidence and leadership. And, sometimes I think we know, well, let me put it this way. Sometimes we don't realize how much we know until we're starting to give advice to other people. So there might be something that Ryan's going through that you say, oh, I did deal with that. I did do that successfully. And here's how I can maybe help Ryan through that. So this process, I think, can be helpful not only for the person in the hot seat, but the other people that are helping that person through the hot seat process. So the conversation kind of goes as long as we need it to. There's no set specific time frame. It typically happens where there's sort of a natural kind of ending to the conversation, and we get to the point where Ryan might say, you know what, I've got a couple of good things here that I want to try, and I'm good if we move on to somebody else, and that's totally cool. It could also be that, we may be sensing that it's getting to that point, and we may say, hey, Ryan, do you have a couple of things here? Great, wonderful, then we can move on to someone else. So my idea is, especially with the size group that we have, maybe even to get to everybody if we can today with something. But even if we don't, there's always the opportunity. You can call me, you can contact me, we can follow up on another call. But also, this is a tool and technique that you can use even within your own organization. So as we're kind of going through it, don't just take in, what we're doing, but if this seems like something that would work for your organization, you can absolutely, spearhead that with your teams as well. So with all that, does anybody have any questions about the process? All right, fantastic. Ryan, would you be okay being in the hot seat first?
Sounds good.
Okay, go for it. Tell us something that we can help you with.
Probably the biggest thing that I've struggled with so far in being a team lead is walking that line between looking out for your team members and providing good customer service when it comes to, like, I'm not talking about like a normal guest complaint. I'm talking about like cussing, screaming, like one of those situations. One of the things that I always like really, really wanted to make a point of when I got promoted was my team members are going to know that I have their best interest in mind, and I'm going to like look out for them and make sure that they're okay. And that makes corrective conversations easier. That makes, that builds trust and chemistry and things like that. But what I have a hard time with is, like, let's say one of my team members says, hey, sir, your phone has to go in the basket. And then, they start having a cussing, screaming, doing whatever. How do you walk that line between providing that guest with good customer service, but also not having your team member think he's throwing me under the bus? Because I can remember like specific situations when I was a team member when something like that would happen. And then like someone would come over and, I guess kowtow is not the right word, but it's the one that I immediately think of, like sort of do that. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, you just completely de-incentivized me from enforcing that rule, if that makes sense. So like just probably walking that line pretty well for my team members and for the guests. And just for context, I work at Pantheon, and that is the strictest ride in the park with loose articles. No zipper pockets, like nothing. So
yeah. So there's no option, right? I mean, there's no option for their phone to go anywhere else except for in the bin.
In the bin. Or you could put it in the locker before you get up there, but at that point you're at the ride. You've been waiting in line. Like I can see where that's agitating, but I still have to be the one to be like, hey, it has to go in the basket.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So Ryan is in the hot seat. This is where we all get to either ask a question or make a suggestion. Who would like to go first? I'll just call on you. Jessica, you are unmuted, so I'm going to ask you to go first.
Okay. Well, this is actually up my alley because I am in guest services, so this is something we tackle every day. Um, so I guess me personally, what I do as a leader is I always make sure my staff know that not only having their backs, but making sure having their safety in mind. When you do get customers that are extremely agitated, it can escalate extremely fast. So I always tell my staff members, if need be, if I tell you you have to leave the scene, you absolutely leave the scene. And then I will take over and kind of handle what's going on with the guest. From the guest perspective, a lot of times it's just explaining things to them. You know, why do they need to leave their phones in that basket? Because oftentimes with customers, that's their property, right? Like they're like, no, I can't lose my property. That phones are people's lives nowadays. But it's just as simple as, you know, explaining to the customer, like, hey, you know, my associate here is you know, just having your safety in mind. We're making sure nobody else gets hurt. If a phone goes flying off on a ride and hits somebody, not only are you damaging your phone, but you're damaging another human at that point. So we are asking that you're leaving the phone here. If you can't go without a phone, you know, maybe this ride is not for you. But we have plenty of other rides where you can have your phone to be able to take photos and be in the moment. So that's kind of what we do. Is it is a fine line. You know, you have to make sure the guest understands the rules, not just that there is a rule, but why that rule is in place. Sometimes a simple explanation kind of simmers them down and they think about it and they're like, oh yeah, that can fly off and hit somebody in the face. My favorite photo is actually from Busch Gardens, where I have a literal hat in my face from the person in front of me. And I'm freaking out in my photo, but it's just, luckily that was a hat and not a phone. So sometimes I think for the guest, it's good for them to realize why you're having these rules in place. The rules are not negotiable. So this is the rule. But there are other options if you're not wanting to follow this particular rule. So you're kind of giving them options, but you're not exactly telling them no in a very harsh way. But with my staff, I think for them, it's important that they know that I'm watching for their safety equally as much as I'm watching for guest safety. Because we have had very angry guests where I've literally had to put myself between a guest and an employee in order to kind of simmer down things. And perhaps it's because I'm 5 feet tall. So putting myself in between somebody, immediately they kind of back off and they're like, oh, this tiny chihuahua is coming after me. But it is something that my staff trust my judgment to in those situations. So even if my staff is wrong in a situation, which I have had staff be extremely wrong, we have virtual reality rides here. And I had somebody that said the wrong rule. She told somebody they could not ride because they were autistic, and that's not a rule to our aquarium in any way, shape, or form. That's just a rule she made up. And that was a very concerning situation. And that was one where I had to tell her, I need you to step off the floor. And then we had talked about it behind the scenes, explaining why that was wrong, that she came up with her own rule. Just because somebody has autism doesn't mean that they're not able to ride a ride. That's not our choice to make. So, but at the end of the day, once we got through that, she was like, I'm really glad that you took me off the floor. And I was like, yeah, because it's your safety matters just as much to you. That parent was very upset. And so I think that's kind of where the fine line comes. It's a lot of trust, trust with your team that you're going to have their back, trust to the guest that you have their experience in mind. At the end of the day with the guest, you want them to walk away saying like, okay, may not have been able to do this ride, but I had a great time doing these other things. And it was because this person suggested I go do XYZ rides. So that's how we kind of take care of things here. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Who wants to go next? Either a suggestion or even a question for maybe some clarification on what Ryan's kind of going through.
I can go with a challenge that I've been having.
Well, actually, let's stay on
Oh,
Ryan
sorry.
for a second. But yeah, no, you're good. You're good. Other thoughts or suggestions for Ryan? Andrew, I know you deal with this a lot from rides and aquatics and stuff like that.
So yeah, I can speak from the rides end. So I think the part I want to focus on the most is like if you have to modify or override what a team member might have been attempting to enforce. So I think of like maybe they're incorrect on a policy or a really common one is a height requirement. So, measuring humans, in my opinion, is one of the most difficult things to measure. Someone's how they're holding their shoulders, how their feet are, maybe a half inch apart versus together. It's amazing how that changes just a little bit their height as they measure. And height is supposed to be cut and dry, but it can be tough. So sometimes there's already that confrontation's already happened and managers called over there, and maybe I do find the guest is just barely tall enough. And the guest then is like, well, why didn't your employee say they were tall enough? And I think that is where you have to be very careful, and you support the team member by saying, I appreciate that my team member is being as thorough as possible and trying to be as safe as possible. I said, they're specifically trained if when in doubt, safety comes first, and it should be a very gentle delivery with that. And like sometimes it will go back and forth of why would your employee not let them on if you're so good at measuring or something like that. I've done it now for a long time, but the most important part though is once you're able to smooth over the situation, and it's hard to say what the formula is to smooth it over because it varies so much, but is to follow up with that team member in private afterwards saying, hey, I did find them tall enough, but I really appreciate that you were looking out for their safety. I never have a problem coming over and double checking. And it's just that follow up is just really important to letting them know that, yes, I might have reversed the team member's decision, but I know that the team member was operating in very good faith, which 99.9% of the time they are.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Andrew. Dan, I wanted to ask you something just from the aquatics perspective, because there's a lot of rules in the water park. So I'm curious how you've handled that in the past.
It kind of covered pretty much everything. I'm trying to take notes here as I go. The main thing that I try to do is listen to both parties and do my best to investigate and figure out how did we get to the point that we're at, and then that helps you better make decisions moving forward. Everybody wants to be heard, so sometimes just letting the guests speak and showing them that you're listening and that you understand helps a lot to at least bring it down a few notches. But like Andrew said, making sure you follow up with whoever the employee is or employees in that situation to let them know that you support them, and not all employees are created equal, unfortunately, but our goal is consistency with our employees. So each one needs handled a little bit differently. That's our challenge, is to figure out how best to communicate with each one.
Absolutely. And there's a couple things that, have been mentioned here. And I think one of the things that Jessica mentioned was trust, right? And you don't have a lot of time to build trust with a guest, but you have a lot of time to build trust with your employees, or I should say more time to build trust with your employees. And if, to Dan's point, if you are saying what you need to say to that guest and the team member knows that you are doing it in their best interest, right? And you're still watching out for their safety, as Jessica said, and you're watching out for the guest safety, and you're making the best of that situation as you can. Then again, you might have a little bit more trust on the opportunity for trust on the team member side, because you might know them a little bit better. But there was a question that I wanted to ask too, and I think we've all probably dealt with this as well, especially when it comes to guests. Is they say when you asking them to put that phone in the basket, they just go crazy, right? They just go, wah! They go off the handle. Is it really the action of them putting the phone in the basket or being asked, or is there's probably something else behind that led up to that? And this is just where the straw broke the camel's back. So I'm curious, like even other things that might impact them in the park, what other things might impact them that could get them to that point? And this is kind of a question for everybody too.
Yeah, I'll admit with our aquarium, I do workshops quarterly with my team. So we always do a workshop in February leading up to March and April. March and April is the two most impatient months of the entire year. That is the whole spring break season. And I tell my team, I'm like, okay, look at it from the guest perspective. They were on a flight to Florida. Their flight got canceled. It snowed wherever they're from. They finally get to Florida 1, 2 days later, and then they're stuck in traffic. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Florida during spring break. Florida Mile is definitely different. 1 mile in Florida is about half an hour drive to 45 minutes. So you have to think about it. People are stuck in traffic coming from the highways to the beaches where we're at for our aquarium. So they're stuck in that traffic for at least 2 hours. They get to our aquarium. They find out, oh my gosh, what do you mean you're at full capacity? I now have to wait another hour before entering the aquarium. So I always tell my team, like, think about it from their perspective. They're not patient by the time they get to us. So how do we make them be patient? How do we make them understand, like, hey, we understand. I was stuck in that traffic with you getting to work this morning. Try to make a joke, try to be like, hey, there's a nice restaurant right across the way. Go eat, have some French fries, have a beer, come back over here. There's a bird rescue facility. They're free to the public. Go check them out. So for us, it's offering just other options to keep the guest from thinking about that outside force coming in. So I read a really fun statistic that guests have about the first 30 seconds when they arrive to an attraction. That first 30 seconds is what will impact their visit. So if they have a positive 30 seconds, you don't have to change their mind. Once they come to an attraction and they have a negative experience in that first 30 seconds, it takes roughly 10 minutes to restructure their brain to think about it positively after that. So even if they had to wait an hour, but the rest of their trip was fantastic, they're more likely to leave us a review to say, oh my gosh, it was horrible that I had to wait. I was standing in the rain. Than to think about, oh, but they had a great time in virtual reality. They had a great time at our Fossil Creek. They had a great time seeing our animals being trained. So for us, it's super important that whoever's at the front of our building is kind of, I jokingly call us the cheerleaders, like they're kind of the hype people. But you do have to consider that from the guest perspective. Like they're bringing in a lot of outside frustrations sometimes. And then other times, same thing. They're, maybe they hit no traffic and they're coming in and they are like, oh, it's the one day I had no traffic. And then how do you play on that high too? So that's one workshop we usually do in February is we kind of focus on that. We act out as though we're the customers, as those scenarios we've actually had. So that way the newbies, because we get a lot of seasonals for March and April that help us out. And then the seasonals can understand this is how the core team handles it. This is what we're doing all the time. When you see somebody who has a positive experience, how do you get them to interact with the next customer? Because customers who are more likely to interact with one another, it's kind of fun to say, but they get looser with their wallets. So it's kind of like the group mentality. If everybody's having fun, everybody's more willing to give you $1 to experience something else in the aquarium. So at the same time, it drives our revenue, but how do you get them to that high? How do you take them from the negative to the positive in that first 30 seconds? What can you do in that 30 seconds that even though they're seeing the parking lot crazy, they're not being able to park, it's raining, go play in a water puddle with their kid, do something. Sometimes if you just take a minute to actually, I don't know, like focus on the one person, it makes them feel like they're 1 out of 100 instead of 100. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but like makes them feel like they're 1 out of the 100 instead of just 100 people in a crowd.
Well, and just real quick, Jessica, I think all of that lends credence to what Dan was saying about everybody wants to be heard, right?
Yeah.
So everybody wants to, if they're gonna, unload on you about their trip in and they got caught in traffic and their order at McDonald's was wrong or whatever it is, like they just want to unload that emotional baggage, and then they're going to be okay. So, I think that's another thing just to kind of keep in mind for that situation is that it might not be about the phone. It might not be even about how your team member interacted with them. It could be just something completely different that this just happened to be the last straw, if you will. So awesome. Thank you everybody for contributing to that. Ryan, was that helpful?
Yeah, very.
Okay.
kind of gave some context to some things. Like we had a really nasty guest complaint on Saturday, and one of the things going on with our ride right now is we're one train because of maintenance. So that doesn't help when there's not a lot of people in the park and your ride has an hour wait because you're running at half capacity. So
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Thank you for that, Ryan. I appreciate you being voluntold to go first. But now we'll take a volunteer. Megan, you said you had something, a challenge that you've been dealing with.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to add a note to wrap up this conversation. I don't know if anybody's ever read Start With Why by Simon Sinek, but it's a great book. And a lot of what everybody said is right, having those separate conversations of asking a guest how their day is going, pulling a team member aside separately, and reading that really helped me frame if somebody knows the reason for something, they might not be as mad about it. But I just wanted to add that. So Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's a pretty good book if anybody's interested.
Awesome.
But yeah, so a challenge that I've been having kind of as a newer leader in my career, and I think a lot of people deal with it at different points, is imposter syndrome. And you know, being a leader, you have to walk into the room, and a lot of people think you have all the answers. And I think I would imagine all of us don't think that's always true and always the case, but I think sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. And for me personally, the challenges that I deal with in business development, I'm 26 and I'm a woman, and there are really not other 26-year-old women in my position that are going to IAPA conferences consistently, to EA conferences consistently. I'm going to some sports ones. And I'm really kind of like the token young person in a lot of rooms, and it's kind of odd. And I've gotten comments before, oh, you're such a baby, you're so much more inexperienced, you know. When you were a kid, I was doing XYZ in this industry. And so I think it can be kind of like deflating sometimes. And I do wonder, well, why am I in this room? Do I have the right to be talking to these other executives who have been in this industry for 20, 30 years? So I think that's something that I really struggle with, is being, I can't change the fact that I'm on my own and kind of one of few, but I'm trying to kind of figure out how to, I think, deal with that frustration of saying, do I deserve to be here? And if I do, kind of how do I manage this frustration? So I don't know if anybody else, you know, deals with maybe being a young leader or imposter syndrome on the day to day, but I'd love to hear other people's perspectives.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, anybody else that wants to either ask a question or provide another perspective or a perspective? Go ahead, Jessica.
I know
Oh, go ahead, Ryan. I saw Jessica first, but go ahead. You spoke first, Ryan, so you go first.
I've kind of dealt with looking at imposter syndrome specifically. I definitely dealt with that when I first got promoted, because I was, you know, trying to figure out, hey, am I actually, even though they promoted me, like, hey, am I actually qualified for this? Am I going to be able to do this efficiently? One of the things that I would say is definitely, if you have a trusted resource or someone who you can go to who's like been in a similar situation as you and go to them for advice, like that absolutely helps. Like one of the things I'm dealing with right now, when I was away at school, they implemented a change to the way that we do our hourly like bumps and rotations and things like that. And pretty much everybody in the area is trying to get used to it right now. So just going to people who, like, you know, have dealt with this before, like, hey, how did you adjust to this change? How did you adjust to X, Y, or Z change? That definitely helps to give you insight that you might not have had before. And it allows someone to be honest and vulnerable with you because you're being honest and vulnerable with them, and they're going to give you genuine information because they can see that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jessica. Thank you, Ryan.
So I guess to kind of focus more on how in the beginning you were saying about insecurities with needing to feel like you always have the answer, even in some cases you don't. So great case for me in leadership, because I'm new as a leader as well, is that we had to close for 60 days from the hurricanes. There was absolutely no knowns. And my team was looking at me and they were like, what is going to happen? What's happening to our jobs? Are we being laid off? What is gonna happen? So what I did is I actually kind of reflected back onto, so I'm a middle manager. So I went to my other managers and kind of was like, hey, let's poll the team. Let's find out who wants hours, who's okay with decreasing hours, who wants to take a vacation. Perfect time to take vacation because there's no schedule, there's no people in the aquarium. So we kind of came together by kind of using other leadership to kind of lean on. And then when it came time to talking to the team, I sat down with the team and was just very human with them and told them, I was like, I'm a human just like you guys. I also don't know what's going to happen to my job, just like you guys. But what I can promise you is those of you who want hours will find a way. We may not do the work we like. We had to do a lot to rebuild this aquarium. We were painting, so it's kind of like a sense of pride now. Every time we look at our walls, we're like, man, we did that. No other department did it. Our department did it. So I think when you're looking at those imposter syndromes, you're in your position for a reason. You didn't just get picked out of random. You didn't get picked out of pity. You got picked because of your strengths. And you have to keep that in mind. You have those strengths. Your team looks to those strengths. And when you do have signs of weakness, it's okay to admit. It's okay to say, I don't know what's going to happen. And it's one of those things, with the team that I have, what's really nice for me is hearing them say the words back to you, like, well, we know you're always going to have our best interest. Because like I said, I'm a middle manager, so my interest is divided. One of my big issues is how do you balance what the company wants and what the employees want? So at the end of the day, you kind of have to align both. So when you're looking into those imposter syndromes of what, why me? Why am I picked? That's why you're picked. Because you will find a solution for your team. You will come up with an answer. You're going to drive the company. So I guess that's my only advice to you is that you deserve it. So it's okay to deserve it. It's not bragging. It's just that's what you're strong at as a leader. And other leaders look to those strengths too. So I know for me, I'm the most communicative leader in Moat. Everybody will attest to that. But I absolutely suck at problem solving. So it's nice because I will communicate to other departments and they're bouncing the creative ideas. So sometimes even looking outside of your department helps with that as well. If you can lean on those other departments, like, hey, I'm struggling with this because my team needs me for that. How do you guys do it? So I think that's kind of what helps get over imposter syndrome is just knowing you do have those strengths. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Carissa, I don't know if I can call on you, but I'm wondering from a female perspective, do you have anything that you'd like to share with Megan from that perspective also?
Kind of backing up what Jessica said is that you were picked for a reason. They saw something in you that led them to believe you have the ability to manage that role. So don't let others downplay you based just solely on your age or your gender. That you got to be better than that. You got to stand up and just say, it doesn't matter that this is the way they're leaning and thinking. I'm here for a reason and I am capable of doing my job.
Love it. Thank you.
Awesome. We also had someone new joining us, Jasmine. I don't know if you're able to say hello. Okay, maybe not. But Megan, she says hello in the chat. Megan, I will just share with you. I understand, your reaction to those comments, because in full transparency, I've said those comments and I shouldn't have. And I'm, as the resident old guy, saying, hey, when you were, 2 years old when I started in this industry. And I think that is more about them than it is about you. If I reflect on why I've said it, it's actually a way, in my mind, at least, to build a connection, and it's not to put you down. And I don't know that that would be the intent of other people. And so I'm sharing that because I don't want you to think that that's a way that they're trying to put you down. It's probably more about them or reflecting on their own career and things like that. So I thought of that when you made that comment that, geez, I've said that too. And I didn't want that to be the.
No, not to me, not to me.
No,
Not to
I
me.
haven't said it to you, but I've said it to other people. I mean, as you know, I deal with I interact with the ambassadors a lot. At IAPA. And so, as I'm getting older, they're about the same age every year, right? And it's the same with new team members coming into the park, right? We are getting older and they're about the same age. So like I said, I know I've made those comments and I've stopped making those comments, at least, consciously anyway, because I know that it's probably coming off in the wrong way, and I don't want to create more of a divide that I'm trying to create when I'm trying to create a connection, if that makes sense. So all that to say that a lot of those comments are much more about that other person than they are about you, and especially what Carissa and Jessica said about you own it. You're there for a reason. You were chosen. You were picked for that. You have the ability. All you have to do is look at your resume and know what you've done and what you've accomplished in this industry. So there's nobody that can take that away from you. And anybody who is making those comments, like I said, it's much more about them than it is about, and chances are they don't know you, right? All they know is what they see and, the fact that you are young. Okay, well, that doesn't mean that they know you and what you bring to the table. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind.
That's great. Thank you. And I don't think you would ever intentionally say anything disparaging to young professionals, Matt. I don't think at least I would never take it that way.
I appreciate that. But like I said, I know I've made similar comments like that, and I hope they haven't been taken that way by anybody. So thank you for that, Megan. Thank you. Oh, by the way, Megan, has this helped? Have we?
Yes, absolutely. This is
Okay.
great. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. All right. Well, we've got some time left. Who else has something to? Who else wants to jump into the hot seat?
Would it be okay if I jumped in the
Of
hot
course,
seat?
of course. Why
Um,
we're here.
so one of my big things, like I said, is as a middle manager, I don't know if anybody else has this, if you guys are middle management or not, but how to balance what the company wants versus what employees want. That seems like something I struggle with pretty frequently.
Mhm.
So any advice would be great.
Okay. I have a couple things, but I want to hear from everybody else first. So feel free to take it away, anyone. Oh, Jasmine does not have a mic. Let's see. Please do. Please do, Jasmine. Since you are good at communication, I have noticed that communicating with both ends seems to work for me. I communicate staff needs to upper management and vice versa. Love that. If that's all you wanted to say, Jessica, Jasmine, go ahead and put stop because I'm waiting to see if there's more. Okay, it seems to work. It seems to work very well for me. Communication is not my strong suit, but I try very hard. I would reiterate what Jasmine has to say there. One of the things that I've actually been doing a lot of work recently on is being in the middle, right? Being in the middle in a middle management position. Hello? Being in the middle management position. And one of the things that I've kind of come to realize is that we're all in the middle of something, right? Whether it's your company and your employees, or your family could be in that mix. It could be vendors outside the company. It could be your team members. Anybody can be in that mix. And I think Jasmine's kind of nailing it right on the head in terms of if we can be that bridge of communication, I think that alleviates some of the pressure. At least I know in my experience, when I wasn't able to communicate everything as well as I could to the upper levels, if you will. And that was partly because I didn't know how or I was afraid to. Then that just compounded the issues that I was experiencing with the team. I'll tell you a quick story of one of the parks I used to work at. I was in a training capacity and I supported the operations division. And so I got to go to all the different meetings that each of the departments had. And so I went to the director's meeting, the director of operations went to his meeting, and he was talking about the fact that we were coming into a slower time of the year. And so we really had to watch our budgets, reducing our staff levels, the whole thing, right? Totally makes sense. It was a year-round facility. So totally made sense. But he said to his team, and he got real serious about it. He said, "You all know how important the guest experience is to me." And he said, "I understand that, I just said to watch your budgets, and I totally mean that." He said, "But if we're in a situation where you need to use a little bit of overtime or you need one extra person over here and that enhances the guest experience and it will reduce the possibility of getting a guest complaint or having people upset, or, as Ryan said, if we can put another train on, if we have, more people and that reduces our guest complaints," he said, "I'm totally okay with you using that overtime. Just let me know. Just tell me so that I can tell my boss." Right. And so I was super excited because I'd been talking to the leads and supervisors and they said, "We never get to use overtime. We've got the people that want the hours. We've got the people who want to provide a great guest experience, but the powers that be won't let us, use those resources that we have just because of the budget." And so I'm super excited because the next meeting I'm going to go to is the management team for that director, right? Director and then the managers. I'm going to the manager's team where he's now going to be talking to his leads and supervisors. And I'm excited because of the message that I just heard. So I go to that meeting with the manager and it's like totally different message. Now the message is you can't use overtime. No overtime whatsoever. And I think about that from a communication standpoint because now that manager has just created a brick wall between the front line and the company and the director, right? Because he's essentially said no overtime. The team really wants it. The team really, could use it. They would probably use it responsibly. And now the director's probably thinking, as time goes on, well, I told them they could use that extra time. They must not have needed it, but now our guest service is suffering. So now you're getting those negative impacts on both ends, where it really could have been alleviated with some communication. Now, as Jasmine noticed, Jessica, you are very communicative. Oh, we know that. I think you also said problem solving. Was that the one that you said, or decision making? Problem solving was one of the areas you did not do so well in?
Yeah. Creative problem solving.
Okay. Got it. Well, and
Good when I have the supplies, but when I don't have supplies.
Perfect. So I think when we have those situations, it does take some creative problem solving to be able to manage both those relationships. But I do think it starts with communication. I also feel like there's an element of kind of human needs that happens there. So if your boss needs to feel safe or feel reassured, then what can we do to help them feel that way? And the same thing with your team. How can they feel safe or reassured? Or even to Dan's point earlier, everyone wants to be heard. So your boss probably wants to be heard. Your team wants to be heard. And sometimes that comes back to you to being that person in the middle that can be the conduit or the bridge for that so that they can all feel heard and then they can all feel like they're all getting all of the information that they need. I know that was a long soapbox answer, but I hope it was helpful.
No, that was very helpful.
Okay, good. Any other thoughts? Any other suggestions for being in the middle that anybody has?
I think it's a perspective thing too. Not to take away from the fact that it is a challenge, but maybe if you take some opportunities to look at it and say, I'm not stuck fighting between two sides that want different things, my operators, my young staff, and the powers that be, but maybe look at it as an opportunity to be an advocate both ways. So whenever the company has a change, you're able to use your communication skills. And instead of just having the company say, we're doing this, you can be like, we've decided based on this data and this research that we are doing this because, and give them a why. And on the opposite side, for the employees, nobody knows how to run your aquarium better than your frontline employees. They're the ones that are in the operation day to day. They know it better than anyone. So you have an opportunity to be their advocate to the powers up and say, our staff had a great idea to do this. Have we considered this? So maybe just the perspective of, you're not stuck in the middle. You're able to be an advocate for both ends.
Mm.
I like that.
And I'll just add on real quickly since I didn't see anybody unmute just yet. But along those lines, being the advocate, when you are in the middle like that, it can feel like there's a lot of pressure, right? But if we can reverse that energy, then all those people around us that can put the pressure on us, we can then influence them. We have that opportunity. So just as much as they influence us, we can also influence them. And I think that comes from the perspective that Megan was talking about.
Is it cool if I chime in with something?
Please.
So I'm very frontline, so I haven't dealt with the middle manager perspective on things yet. Like I'm a lead, and then I've got my unit supervisor above me. But I've definitely, just to reemphasize, like communication, I've heard plenty of stories of a unit supervisor, for example, going to like a full-time supervisor or a manager and being like, hey, the team members are having a lot of trouble understanding this part of our SOP. Can we get that rewritten? Or like worded a little bit better, or maybe even tweaking a little procedure like, hey, like for example, like direction of travel when you're checking restraints. We prefer it to go this way as opposed to that way. And thankfully, where I work, they've been very, very receptive to that. They're always very receptive to communication from your frontline and middle people to adjust policies and things as need be. So just another emphasis on how important communication is and how helpful it can be.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Excellent. Anything else about the middle? All right, Jessica, was that helpful?
Very helpful.
Good. Good, good, good. All right. Well, we've got 10 minutes left. Who wants to hop in the hot seat now? Bueller? Bueller? All right. Well, I guess you all have everything figured out, which is fabulous. Fabulous. I totally understand. I will again throw out that if there was something that you wanted to bring up and you didn't feel like doing it in this forum, I totally understand. But my email and my phone number is always open, so please feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do for you individually. And if there's other sessions that you want to attend, there will be more of these coming up in the future. Dan has stolen my tagline, but learn, network, share, and grow, or share, grow. I forget the order right now. But learn, share, network, and grow. There we go. So each one of those is one of our sessions. So we're going to follow up next time with another one on learn. And I'm still kind of TBD on the subject on that, but we'll probably send out a survey so that I can get some input from everybody. But I have scheduled that one if you want to jot it down. So that one will be on April 24th at 1 p.m. April 24th at 1 p.m. Right back here on Zoom. And so you're all now on my email list, and so you can watch your email for more specific information on that. And certainly if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have suggestions, I'm more than open to all of those. And again, if there's anything I can do for you, please feel free to reach out. Email, phone number, smoke signal, however you want to get in touch with me, I will happily answer your questions. Okay. Any other just kind of random questions before we go? All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I really do appreciate it. And we'll see you all soon.
Thanks for setting this up, Matt. Bye,
My
everybody.
pleasure.
Bye.
Thanks.
you.
Have a good one.